Welcome back to episode 10 of Sister. Why are we still doing this? You guys, this is the second to last episode of season 15. I've been asked several times if we know if there is going to be a season 16 of Sister Wives. And here's an article I found from last week. Kody and Christine Brown's daughter, Mykelti, appeared to accidentally confirm a season 16 is in the works. During an Instagram live session, she took questions from fans. She told fans that TLC did film the birth of her daughter, Avalon, earlier this month. But on the flip side, Sister Wives season 15 has not featured her pregnancy. The action scene in the season was filmed in 2020 during the start of the coronavirus pandemic, which is still going on. So hopefully this means there is a season 16. And I don't know about y'all, but I've been watching Mary's Friday Night with Friends, episode she does on Instagram, and she is wild. But that's not the point of today's series. Let's get started.
Ever since COVID-19 hit, we lost our film crew because they can't afford to be exposed. It's all backwards because I'm filming backwards. So if I was there. We are now using our little phones and our tripods, and we are trying to record ourselves.
Ever since COVID-19 hit, we have to use these little phones because our film crew can't come out because it's not safe. We can't even get 20 seconds into this episode without the damn tripod showing up. So we start this episode off with the adults and Hunter meeting up at the property to have a picnic and kind of talk a little bit about COVID, and Hunter seemed very annoyed.
Hunter has come home from Air Force Academy. He's graduated. Gathering as a family and being around the family is a big deal to Hunter. And it's really sad because right now we don't know how that's going to go.
Hi, Hunter.
We sort of figured we would just set up our lawn chairs and visit, but stay socially distanced.
I'm hungry. I'm not ready to melt down.
I brought myself a sandwich.
The tripod.
I made salmon patties. If you get
That sounds fantastic.
you have to get them off the ground. Lumber is
Yeah, I'll try it.
It's thousands of dollars.
6 feet.
I'm really not worried about it. I tested negative, so.
I absolutely think that we need to keep our distance from each other. Following the guidance of Kody, I'm good to just stay home.
But later in the episode, you say that the family needs to come together, so we'll talk about that later. So they're at this picnic, and Hunter kind of gets annoyed with Kody.
It's not going to change who you are.
Can you imagine me not being able to work out, not being able to exercise?
Yeah,
Can you imagine me losing 20
you're
years
making
of
it
my
sound
life,
like
my
that. I'm
longevity?
going to be a schizophrenic for the rest of my life.
I don't know what the virus is about. I don't know how deadly it is going to be.
So you're talking about no summer, no holidays, no Christmas, nothing together.
You're jumping to the end and we don't know. Why don't we just wait 2 weeks and then have the discussion again?
Well, we'll get together when it's safe. We'll be lucky if we have a family at the end.
So we do know that this virus is very deadly. But the way that Kody made it about himself, could you imagine me not being able to work out? Could you imagine me getting 20 years shaved off my life? You have 4 wives, dude. You're pretty much 95 in your brain right now. And it shows later in this episode. And that's just being real because this conversation, Kody just took it to the heart and made it all about him again. So the next small part in this episode is Christine doing a little captain's log in her car saying that they need to go back to Utah. And she brings this up towards the end of the episode, right before the season finale. So we'll talk about it more later, but of course Utah was brought up again. So the next part of this episode is Mary and her mom baking. They're working on recipes for the Airbnb, and they decide to call Mariah and Audrey and see how they're doing. And honestly, it was a super sweet moment between Mary and her mom, and I know Mary was very close to her mom, and her mom passed away this year. So I'd like to honor Grandma Bonnie by showing the sweet moment of them baking. And not gonna lie, it made me tear up. I lost my grandma 2 years ago this month, and it kind of got me in my feels a little bit because grandmas are very precious.
While Mariah and Audrey are at the bed and breakfast, kind of running that for us. You should probably film me as I walk around doing stuff, not just slap. I am the star, Mom.
So they're basically talking about how they document their lives is so much different because of COVID. They also call Mariah and Audrey and talk a little bit about like how the Airbnb is going and what the future holds, because Mariah has been applying for jobs in Salt Lake City, and Mary knows that they were not going to be at the Airbnb forever. But I think Grandma Bonnie being with Mary in Flagstaff was the best decision they could have made. And I'm glad that she got to spend that time with her mom. So the next part of this episode is probably going to be several parts, and it's where all the adults meet back at the property to finally have an in-person talk about communication. And Cody just fucking melts down. He just literally takes a majority of his feelings and lays them on the table, which is good for the soul. But if you're at a thing about communication, communicate.
Oh, over the past little bit, I've had conversations with my sister wives about the effectiveness of our conversation as a family. So now I'm bringing everybody together to see if we can figure out some sort of rules for conversation as a family.
I think that it will be a really good thing to establish some ground rules, because I'm tired of going into conversations and leaving not feeling like I matter.
I think if we are honest and talk to each other for real and we're kind and easy, I think this could help us a lot.
I feel like I'm going into this conversation open and yet slightly guarded, because you just never know who's going to be kind of in a pissy mood, who's going to be on attack, who's going to be defensive. You just never know how people are going to be going into a conversation.
Well, I don't really have a plan. I just have gone around and talked to you guys all individually about what my thoughts were.
Like, my idea was to write down what we all bottom line need from a conversation. I am not someone who's trained in this. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I just feel like if we all sort of talked about how we communicate, we need rules for how to have conversations.
I get what we're talking about.
Well, me either, really.
Are we going to talk about our feelings?
I'm sorry, Kotex, did you just show up to the conversation and be like, oh, everyone's talking about communication, but what are we talking about here? Y'all need better communication. It's very apparent that the 5 of you have no communication whatsoever. The only time that y'all communicate is when Janelle was probably like, hey, I need to come over and talk to you about something. They've said it multiple times. They didn't really see each other once they moved to Flagstaff. So obviously you're going to fall apart.
Conversation, very cynical.
Oh,
because I'm
please.
extremely discouraged that I can't get my wives to all agree on one simple thing: preventing the spread of COVID in our family.
I'd like to chime in here and say is that Cody's problem isn't just getting the wives to agree on how to handle COVID-19. He's coming to the conversation very cynical because he's butthurt that none of them want to live in the same big house that he probably spent hundreds to get the design for. This is not about COVID-19, and that's what it made me realize, is that this is not about COVID-19. This is about the fact that he moved all of these women to Flagstaff with the hopes of being in one big house, and they all shot him down. He's angry. He's butthurt about it. And, I mean, everyone has their own opinion, and this is mine, but I feel like the underlying issue here is that everyone wants to live separately, and he's mad.
Same way, like it's a fight constantly to, like, have an idea even heard. So, you know.
What are you gonna write down, Cody?
Oh, nothing.
Yes, you are. You have to play.
My problem is I don't want to write anything down there because I don't give a anymore.
Watch your fucking mouth.
You know, we've moved here. We're going through the struggles. I've been arguing about COVID now for so long with these ladies. That's the reason I don't care anymore. I don't enjoy the relationship anymore because it feels like a constant fight.
To be fair, when you guys have had conversations about COVID-19, instead of listening to what your wives think is the best thing to do, you said, I'll be the only one going from house to house. And if y'all decide to get together, I'm not going to be around you. But you're the one still going from house to house. So he goes on in the conversation to say that nobody has the same morals or values anymore, and that he's tired of being the middleman, and blah, blah, blah. Oh my God, it's just the same shit.
Sometimes I don't want to hear an idea. I don't care, you know, sometimes.
Then why are we here? Why are we doing this? So he doesn't care? He doesn't care. He doesn't think that we need to. He doesn't care about what? What does he not give a about?
Like, it's taking all of my self-control to just stay.
He doesn't want to hear ideas, but he has no problem putting his ideas out there. Make it make sense, because to me it doesn't.
I need to do what I can to hold this family together. And I feel like that this is why Janelle is kind of coming at these conversations, because she feels like she needs to do what she can to hold the family together, because it's falling apart.
Mary is one of my favorite wives, but I need to call her out. Mary, you do nothing to help keep the family together. You're barely around. And the reason I say that is because all of the wives and Cody have said that the only time that Mary comes around is during like birthdays or holidays. How about you pick up your fucking phone and call one of your sister wives and say, hey, let's have a socially distanced lunch. Or, hey, how are you doing today? Let's have a conversation. It's been a while since we talked. You have to put the same amount of effort in as the rest of the wives to even have a consideration in that conversation. Because in my opinion, Mary, you stay in your little bubble, which is fine. That's where your safe space is. But you don't do anything to contribute to keeping the family together. You sit at your house. And I get, like, during COVID, you have to sit in your house. But you don't call them. You don't check on them. That we know of, because they've all said that you don't. Sorry, but girl, come on now. So the next part that I'm going to play is the part of the conversation where I realized that this was not about COVID-19. Like I said earlier, this is about the fact that they all live separately.
Everybody's happy where they're living. Great. We could sell this property, you know. We're not one family anymore. And in all of our years in Vegas, we struggled to be this one family thing. And as I go through that process, I learn how vastly different each part of my family is and kind of has their own values. And we get to Flagstaff, and I feel like I'm not having to struggle with it as much because we're not as close together.
So then Christine pulls up the family mission statement and reads it, which is something that they wrote years ago, and they should stick by it. If you're going to write it and you're going to sign it, you should stick by it.
Want to be with each other again? Is it just too hard?
Yep.
Our relationships are optional. I have the family mission statement on purpose. I brought it on purpose.
So one thing I noticed throughout this entire conversation is Robin says nothing. Robin does not put in her 2 cents. Rude. Robin does not put in her 2 cents. Robin does not sit there and say that, oh, we should try this or do that. She's absolutely silent. Because you want to know why? She's probably living for it. She's probably living for the downfall. But that's something that I really noticed, is that it's mostly just Janelle, Cody, Christine, and Mary. And Robin's just sitting there.
Cody
Oh,
using the word
Jesus, that's
values, and I thought we had the same values, so that's new for me.
For years, we tried doing things together.
What is he doing?
And in the end, I think we just determined that working together for us wasn't even safe. And honestly, I'm at a point now where I see the family in many ways as an obstacle to my own goals.
I'm sorry, your goals? Why is this about you?
We're not happy. The 5 of us are not happy. My wife say, if you weren't in the picture, we would still get along. That's such bull. I've seen these women treat each other so shitty for so many years that I can't take it anymore.
I'm just looking at Cody like, what the hell planet did you come from? We're in this plural marriage. You have agreed to this. Like, considering your family an obstacle to his own goals, well, that's about the most selfish thing I've ever heard. But, okay. In the spirit of communication, I have to hear him and realize that's where he's at.
Just one massive shit show that doesn't end. The rest of this episode is Christine talking to Cody about bringing up the idea of moving to Utah. He kind of, in a sense, agrees with her because he's always wanted to move back to Utah, but that's going to backfire in episode 11. And episode 11 is also the last episode of season 15. Thank you guys for being here for every single part.